Hi everyone, I'm Jake Bates. I'm a workforce management consultant at Shopworks. Welcome to the Workforce Management Podcast. I'm joined today by Ben, one of our customer success managers. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Jake.
Great to have you on. On this episode, we're going to be kind of focusing on when we're putting together a shopping list for our workforce management, what kind of key tools are almost your nice to haves, your must haves, and kind of understanding what's a good fit for me. So just tell me, Ben, what are kind of the variety of tools out there for workforce management that I should be kind of thinking about when deciding?
Yeah, great question. So, let's start by the basic of workforce management. Workforce management, you need visibility over what's going on well for your workforce. So you need an easy to use scheduling tool, a rota building tool. You need to be able to manage your absences, to gain visibility over who is available for work or not. You need to have a TNA system, so time in attendance. So that would be, any way of capturing attendance, whether that's a biometrics device that would scan your face and say, hey, Ben was here at that time. Whether that's, something using NFC tags, so you can log in or clock in with your own device, or it could be a phoning system or any kind of device or system that you might use in shop to confirm the attendance. So that's one. Then a workforce management solution will propose also automation of your own rules. So things like automated payment, premium payment. You might get a bit more money when you work at night or when you work on your own, or that sort of things. It would automate your entitlement as well, calculation. So depending on your terms and conditions, the system would be able to say, well, you're entitled to X amount of hours or days a year for holidays. And then you've got more advanced features that would potentially, automate your forecasting. So, predict how busy you're going to be and how many people you need in order to operate.
Yeah.
There are all sort of things. There's also a compliance piece, of course, to make sure you're not breaking any regulations.
Yeah, I think just on that, for me personally, the compliance in this day and age is kind of a key part of that. People working on paper and Excel is great, but there's paper everywhere. Yeah. Being able to track hours for under 18s. I suppose, talk to me a bit more about kind of compliance as a tool and what are the pros and cons, and if I don't have compliance at all, what would be the risk of the business there?
The compliance element is increasingly important. Workforce management is used in industries that require a lot of flexibility, hospitality, retail, logistics, name it. But with flexibility comes risks of breaking regulations. And what we mean by compliance, just to clarify for our listeners, is things like making sure that you've got the minimum rest rules that, those regulations are abide to. So making sure that your staff have enough rest every week, that they don't end up working 7 days in a row and working ridiculous hours and end up being too tired and simply, injuring themselves in the workplace.
Yeah, I think the compliance for me is a big part of it at the moment. I think if we've got Excel, paper, and we're not tracking time and attendance, we're not tracking under 18s, then there's an element of risk there, isn't there? So I suppose the complexity of the different kind of regulations, different pay rules, it must be almost a necessity nowadays.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, working time directives, which is what we refer to here when we talk about compliance, these regulations are in place to protect your workforce. They're here to make sure that staff have enough rest, that you don't end up with under 18 working in the middle of the night on their own, that sort of thing. So it's very important to monitor and make sure that you're not breaking any regulations and perhaps more importantly, you don't put your staff at risk. You look after your staff.
And are there tools, talk about compliance tools, what would a tool do rather than me doing it myself?
Well, an automated tool is consistent, and that tool is aware, it's a system, it's a computer, it's aware of the actual regulations.
Yeah.
Us as human beings, we might forget.
Yeah.
Or we might not realize of what we're doing is breaking the law. So the tool is essentially automating that process, giving you the peace of mind that what you do on a system is compliant.
Yeah.
Because we find that, it's very easy for managers that have had a long week and they absolutely need someone to cover a shift, and they say, oh, that would be fine.
Yeah.
But in reality, that person might have worked 14 days in a row, and then you break the regulations. And that's not good for the staff member, because it's about health, and it can put that staff member at risk. But it's also not good for the business, because if there's an accident or anything happened during that person's shift, then there are fines that could be involved, and you give your business a bad name. So compliance is absolutely critical.
And I suppose for our listeners, maybe thinking, I've only got 10 people at the company, it's quite easy to manage, all the way up to I've got 5,000, 10,000. I suppose I'm leading to the bigger the company, the less visibility you have, and the kind of the less grip on that you have. So
yeah, I mean, it's true. Well, having said that, smaller businesses doesn't mean easier operations. You find that sometimes smaller businesses have more ad hoc rules than bigger enterprise customers out there. But yeah, it's all about transparency. You're right. Like, whatever happens on the ground needs to be recorded. So you've got visibility at senior level.
Yeah.
And that's important for the compliance piece that we discussed. That's important for payroll, making sure that you pay people correctly.
Yeah.
And all sort of things that I could go on for hours, but it's all about making sure that you record information so it's visible across the board.
And I think what we've been kind of talking about, I would steer more as kind of an operational kind of led person. If I'm sat now looking from a finance C-level, what kind of tools are available to manage my store budget? I'm assuming budgeting, cost analysis, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's a good question, because it goes well with what we just discussed about making sure that on the ground data is recorded, because that allows is that from a finance perspective, from a payroll perspective, when you then export that data and use that data for your own tasks, it's accurate, and you can report on things like cost. How much a shop costs you to run, because you've got all the details of the hours that were used. When it comes to exporting payroll, for example, you've got a clear breakdown of the different payments that are owed and things like that. So at senior level, it's all about having access to that data, and that the data is accurate, so you can use for your own benefits.
And kind of just wrapping up finally, in terms of I'm looking for a workforce management provider, what can I expect to kind of fit within a standard workforce management? How complex, bespoke, what can I expect within that?
Well, workforce management solutions, it's quite a broad range of products out there. You would find like some solutions that are off the shelf, and what you tend to get is just a raw export of the data recorded, and it's up to you to manipulate that data and to make it, to put it into the structure, and that is usable for you. Then you've got more bespoke or with high level of configs approach, where the solution will actually automate a lot of those processes for you. So you tell the system what your rules are. It could be if you work after 11 p.m. you get an extra £2 an hour. Or it could be things like overtime is paid time and a half, and then double on the bank holiday, or whatever it might be. You come across all sort of rules out there. And then the system will automate that for you. Including the lunch breaks, for example. That's quite standard as well. Like, if you meet certain requirements, then lunch breaks are deducted automatically, for example. So a workforce solution will be able to do that for you. So again, it gives you the peace of mind, because that was true for compliance about, you might forget and you might not be consistent about the way you manage things. When it comes to rules, it's the same thing. Like, we all human, we might forget. And then if you forget the way that the rules operate, then you might end up on mispayment or whatever it might be. So the system automates all that for you and gives you the peace of mind and consistency across the board.
Fab. Well, look, Ben, I think we'll wrap up there. really good to talk to you again. I think listeners can find a blog article on this on the website. There should be a link afterwards. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Ben.
Cheers. Responsible.